There we go.
All right, it is on.
Well, welcome everybody. For those that I haven't met before, I'm Frank Sermonero, and I'm chairing the Revenue Enhancement Committee. And I think we have PTC here. Is that?
That's correct.
Welcome.
Hi.
And Joe from the Ed Foundation. Welcome. These meetings, if you haven't been here before, these are really informal. They're not like our board meetings, so feel free to participate in the conversation and at any time you'd like. We have basically just 2 or 3 items on the agenda because we wanted to spend some time just focused on these few items. The first one is...
Can we pass some agendas out to them? Do you have
the agendas are there.
You all have them?
Yep. The first item is something that we have been calling the Adopt a Program Initiative. It's something we started talking about last year, and then it kind of went by the wayside a little bit with the budget season and everyone getting kind of refocused on the budget. What our thought was with this, and we can talk about some of the takeaways we had from our last meeting, is that we were trying to find a mechanism where there could be some contributions to the school district and have those contributions earmarked very specifically for certain programs. Specifically programs where you can't charge an activity fee for, but someone would like to make a donation and see those donations go specifically toward that. Could be a math program, it could be a sports program, it could be a kindergarten program, it could be very specific. And we've had some discussions and brainstormed around how we could build such a program and allow folks to either target their money, and if something should happen to that program and the program should go away, they can even get refunded that money. And we have some write-ups on our website, right? It's on the public section.
That is not live yet because
Okay.
they still have to finalize it. Anne-Marie had some things to check on yet. That is just the first revision.
Can you want me to chime in?
Sure, absolutely.
What we're trying to do is create a little bit better communication on what we really expect and what we kind of need in terms of volunteering. So this website is. Do you have a copy for them
Yes,
so that they can see that
I
back
have.
there? This is just a prototype of what we're working on to post on our website. But we actually have a number of policies that we're referring to. We're putting a facts page together that shows, what we can do as far as if someone would choose to volunteer. We know we already do have a lot of volunteers that are probably working in a lot of capacities that we're not even quite aware of. So I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is, and why I invited Joe and you, Helen, here this evening, was to talk about, since you obviously, through the foundation and through what PTC has done for years, have a lot of people behind you, and that's kind of what we need. 2 of the initiatives that we're working on now are trying to develop a database and also trying to get this Adopt a program kind of up and running and seeing what we can be. But we really don't want to just rely on money. I mean, people's time is important too. So that's like donating your time is like an in-kind contribution to the district, even though you don't put the money in an account somewhere. So looking at that sheet, you can see what we're trying to make it very evident and very clear to people how they can help us out. But beyond that, we invited you specifically here, not just to sit and listen, obviously, but to help us think of some ways where you might be able to, or if you know people are interested in volunteering on a larger scale for manpower and things like doing a database or helping out with that. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I might be missing something, but I know that's kind of global, and it might help frame the question for you. I didn't really ask you a question yet, but
If we can kind of talk about these initiatives separately a little bit. The first one with this Adopt a Program, what we had worked on are some prototypes of sort of a la carte menus, if you will, where you could almost check off the different areas within the school where you would like to make some donations. If If you want to make a specific donation of $5 toward the kindergarten, $10 toward a certain math program, whatever, it's that level of granularity that we want to offer people the opportunity to put their money. I mean, sometimes they want to make donations, but they're not sure where's this money going to go. I really want to see a certain program survive, and that's where I want to put my money. This would be a way to give them that. And it's the whole campaign that we're struggling with. We want to brand this Adopt a Program initiative. We've got our art teacher working on logos, and we're hoping that we can see signage everywhere of that logo so that people can start to be familiar when they see that logo what it means, and it can get a kind of a grassroots campaign started within the school district itself. So everywhere you go, you start to see these logos, you see these signs in the sports area, in the school, any kind of event where there's public participation, and just to try to get it to kick off. Now, we know it's going to take several years before we could really get to the point where we have significant dollars coming in, but we've looked at other school districts, and it does get significant. I mean, we've seen schools that had $4 or $5 million raised. It took them 7, 8, 9 years to get there, but they got there. So that's kind of the idea we were kicking around. The issue is that this committee can't run that. We can only start to come up with ideas, and then we look for some organization or some person to kind of spearhead this initiative and help us get it to where it needs to be. So that's sort of where we are. We've gone through a couple of variations of what we thought the program would be and what our next steps are, but we've sort of hit a brick wall at this point where we need some interest or some volunteer who could spend some dedicated time, at least initially, to get this thing off the ground and get it running. So Dr. Otto invited you folks here and thought if you heard what we're trying to do, you'd have some ideas of your own that you might be able to help us with and maybe come up with a better idea than where we are so far. So our takeaways from our last meeting was that you were going to solicit some volunteers, which you did, Dr. Otto. You've got the PTC and Ed Foundation here, and some expectations of what we would need help with, and that's what this document is?
That's the start at that. And I think focusing it on the kinds of things that we'd like to see happen to help us, in times that we're cutting staff, still have people available to help us do some things that we would still like to continue to do.
So, what are your thoughts on if someone were to volunteer to help with this initiative? What are some of the things that you think they would need to dedicate their time?
Well, obviously, I think the main initiative that we're working on right now is the Ed Foundation. I mean the database for the alumni.
Well, let's keep that separate. I'm specifically talking about the Adopt a Program initiative.
Well, we have that open. We've had that open-ended where people can volunteer their time for just about anything. So it's really open-ended, as long as what they would do would fall into the parameters that we'll be setting up and the things that we would need. It could be coming in to help out in the schools. It could be helping at sport events. It could be helping at...
I think we're talking two different... I think you're talking about the volunteering of the time under the program.
I'm talking about who can spearhead this program.
I think
right.
We're at two...
the honest answer.
Last meeting, you had said you don't think you have the resources.
I was going to say, let me start from there then. The honest answer is that if we could have a paid position and somebody that could run something like this, that would be the ideal. So absent that, I think it's something that we need to reach out to in the community, which is why I invited you here to maybe help us in a smaller scale way with some ideas that you might have, because you have the quote, the boots on the ground. We don't. So that's kind of why I invited them here, to see if they had any ideas about how they might be able to.
Just to be clear, our issue here is the volunteers. Of course, we need volunteers to help in many ways, but we need leadership is where we have a problem. There's no resources available in the school district to take on a program like this and get it moving from ground zero up to where we're actively having a campaign out there where people can make contributions.
Absolutely.
We need to get from zero to that 10,000-foot view. And then we need volunteers also as we decide, what are some of the things that this initiative will do in order to raise money. Is it just going to be signage? Is it going to be to have some other fundraisers? What are the mechanisms? That's what we need. This someone to take charge of that and have some leadership to get it off the ground.
Typically, that function, and that's why I've invited Joe here to help with that discussion, falls in a lot of school districts under the guise of an ed foundation. So perhaps that might be a vehicle. I know in a lot of districts there's there's councils of different groups like the PTC that they all work together toward a common goal. So at this point, it's open for discussion. Is the best way I could put it.
Any initial reaction from?
I guess the question that I would have. I mean, a couple things that you mentioned sounded to me initially to be just things that are covered under a curriculum, and to get the community to contribute to something which their perception would be that's funded by tax dollars already, is a little difficult. Now, if you have a specific program that would be an enhancement to education, be it, I'll just say field trips, or something like that, where you can say this is something that the funds are not available, through to be able to fund it from the general budget of the school district, then you can get people to buy into something to that extent,
Right. What started this off was during our budget workshop sessions, which we'll jump into again in December and January. The cycle starts all over again. During those sessions and trying to balance the budget, we've had many people come up and say, I would donate toward this. Kindergarten was a big example where some folks took it upon themselves to try to raise the money specifically to earmark towards saving that program. Well, that was a big nut, to try to raise that money in one shot. But other programs, it's not that big of a nut as it is for kindergarten. It's a lesser nut, but they could be things that are in jeopardy just because of where we are with our budget. So we wanted a mechanism there to allow people to say, I can make that donation. And it's for something that, as you say, they would hope their tax dollars would go toward. But the reality is they're sitting in a budget workshop and they're hearing that this program's in jeopardy. What can I do to help? How can I help?
I mean, I thought the initiative relative to to kindergarten had some promise to it. I just don't know if they had enough time,
Exactly.
in order to do it. Because in reality, it's an economic savings to somebody that would be contributing to that versus what they would be paying in daycare, childcare, whatever you want to call it. For the other portion of the day, if you have two working parents, is along and the short of it. I looked at those numbers and I thought that's a bargain, for someone of a child of that school age, in order to participate in. And why wouldn't you, other than not having the ability to pay a lump sum up front, and I know it's difficult for the school district in order to become I hate to say it, collection agency, of keeping a balance of you've paid this month, you didn't pay this month.
That's typically what ed foundations do.
They could.
Right.
I mean, that could be done, but it's also difficult to say to someone, because you did pay this month and you didn't pay this month, well, your kid can't come.
Right.
Approach.
But they are doing that now,
Yeah.
with the athletic fees. Somebody has
Correct.
to keep track to make sure every athlete has paid their 150 or their activity fee or 50. So they are doing it now.
But it is it's a one-shot payment versus of a much lower number.
No, there's probably just as many athletes as there are students involved in activities.
No, I don't mean about number. I just mean the one-shot payment, meaning the parents pay that activity fee in one payment up front, and a much smaller number than what it was for the people to contribute towards full-day kindergarten. where, if you're asking someone to pay, and if the number's correct in my mind, and it's probably not, okay? If it was $850, and we can save full-day kindergarten, there are a lot of families that can't pay one lump sum of $850. Now, could they pay $85 a month for the next 10 months?
Right.
Sure, they could probably do that, but now you need something in place in order to collect that $85 per month for the next 10 months, and keep track of that, make sure people are accountable on it, and such. That if they make that pledge, that they live up to that pledge, for all intents and purposes.
If I can just, I think in the bigger picture, we're probably going to be facing, I always say when one thing, I said if something happens once, it surprises you. If it happens a second time, it's no longer a surprise. If it happens a third time, it's now a trend. So we're in a trend now of the probable scenario that some things are going to start to disappear from the landscape unless there's funding to replace them. Mm-hmm. And the sad reality is that at the point that those cuts are if they have to come, we don't have to have activities in sports. So the arrow is probably going to point in most districts, at those things first. And when you have strong foundations and strong community support to raise money, you might be in a position to have to look to a foundation to fund what you quoted as earlier, saying the taxpayers expect to be paid through their taxes. Those expectations are going to they've already begun to change. So it's incumbent upon us to try to find alternate sources of funding, or some things are going to go away. I don't know what they are, and don't quote me in the paper saying I said sports are going to go away, but some things are going to go away unless, there's going to be more money coming from the state.
You demonstrated that well last year.
I mean, as did many school districts.
I mean, you did. You demonstrated that well last year. All the reams of paper have been cut.
Right.
It's no longer simple like that.
So I think that's the spirit in which we come, to try to find creative solutions to,
I think we need a mechanism to allow people to help if they can. I think to ask folks like that group who tried to raise money for the kindergarten, full-day kindergarten, to expect pockets of groups to come up out of the sand and save some of these programs. It's not. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't, or maybe they just won't be able to get it together quick enough. I think we need to have that mechanism in place to allow folks to say, okay, that's where we donate our money, if we need to donate our money. Now, of course, these ideas come out of necessity, and that's why we're talking about them now, but I don't see this as just a mechanism to save programs. I think it's a mechanism to eventually enhance programs.
Absolutely.
They don't have to be in jeopardy. We could say, listen, we're just not happy with where we are with our test scores. Maybe folks can donate money into a certain area that could raise the test scores for the school by allowing additional tutoring or whatever it is that
technology upgrades.
Whatever it is. It's not just right now we're looking at, hey, this is a safety net to help save some programs that could potentially be in jeopardy. I look at it into the future, a few years away, as enhancements to make it a better school district, to provide for things above and beyond what the tax base can afford to do. So there's the sky's the limit. Like we've talked about this over several sessions. So you get into some ideas. I mean, maybe some people are interested in the band and they want more than just a band. They want a full orchestra. Maybe that's where they want to donate their money. They could donate their money to create a full
strings
orchestra
program.
Well, I think
whatever you could
you're
think.
having two discussions. That one we're trying to concentrate with volunteers to bring them in, and I know we had people in the audience that really wanted to come forth on that. And then again, we're trying to bring money in for program help or additional programs, and I think without the volunteers, we're not going to have the latter. So I think we need to start with bringing volunteers, and I know we did have a list. Now the majority, it seems band always comes up, but the majority were band parents.
Well, people
The
tend
problem
to
with the volunteers right now is that the volunteers will just be haphazard. There's no leadership that says, here's how we need to assemble ourselves and here's what we need to do.
Could we have, I know they're busy now, could we have department heads as far as as far as the math department? Couldn't they bring up something that we know we had some parents that wanted to come in and help with that program? Couldn't they have a sign-up sheet and say, we're looking for, and post it on the web, we're looking for 5 volunteers for this department or 3 for this department? And we could start from there and see how many we could get going, get in.
What would they do? How would that help with the fundraising aspect of it?
Well, not the fundraising. I'm just saying we're starting with volunteering. So we did have parents that wanted to start with that. You know, maybe they didn't want to donate the money, but they wanted to donate their time. So we don't want to shut them out either.
Right.
So, you know, the retired teachers maybe that can't afford to do that.
Maybe from the PTC's point of view, I mean, you're a long-standing organization here in Daniel Boone. I mean, your thoughts on some of what you're hearing? I know this is hitting you a little cold.
It's a very raw idea.
No, that's okay, but the one thing that I was thinking is almost like you have to put an ad out
Right.
to the community, everyone, because we're only elementary.
Right.
You know, so we're hitting.
And that's very typical in most school districts where you have
Sure.
the PTAs and PTCs.
Right, but there's, you know, right now we were just talking, there's 312 members.
In your PTC?
Families.
Wow.
Out of 8. Now, that's, what did I tell you, 428 individual students, and there's, 1,800 kids in K through 5th grade.
1,700, but
1,700.
Right.
We've only got 400 of them whose parents have actually joined
That's actually pretty,
PTC.
that's actually pretty good.
I see that pretty good.
It is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's really good.
that's a good hit rate. That means you're very active.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
I can
really
also,
You have 1 in 4.
5 years ago, it was standing room only at our September meeting. There was no place to stand.
Yeah, I know that.
Our last meeting, 20 people? Maybe 28. 28 people. And that's the most people we will probably have all year.
What do you think that's attributable to?
People are working.
So they've had to go back to work.
Exactly. And when because I've seen every membership form that's come through, when they're checking what they can do, it is
Nighttime stuff,
a
probably.
few people
Yeah.
can come in during the day. Most are, I can send in baked goods, I can do stuff at home, that kind of stuff. So it's
a dilemma.
us. We've cut things and programs that we've done through the PTC because of the fact we couldn't get people to step up and chair an after-school activity for 300 kids.
Right.
Right.
We were having problems. So we channeled that into another direction.
And I think that bears in what the environment is going to tolerate. And so I think
Well,
this is really...
and I honestly, I think most of the people that have stood up and said, well, you know, what about the volunteering or this, that, we're probably retired people. I mean, most of them are taxpayers that, you know, maybe remember the tax.
Yeah, they said that was a
You know,
mixed
but-
bag
right, but
program
I mean,
and that was
they're
going on.
retired
Seem to-
people, they're
you mean
not
where
the
they can
parents
come in
or
in the
the
summer and work
grandparents.
and,
Yeah.
and get some credit on their tax bill. Initially, that appeared to have worked really well and then broke down.
Yeah, I heard that kind of ended up in a little bit of a disaster.
It did. But initially, the first couple
Right.
of years, it seemed to be very successful. And I you know, it's been a while ago when
Right.
that happened. You know, what caused that to break down a little bit. But, you know, there's a lot of schools that embrace the seniors and retirees, you know, to
Right.
come in and, you know, and help. I mean,
Well, and there will be some that will do it even, they're not looking.
Right, they're not looking for the tax break.
So they might be grandparents of students or whatever, but,
So I think on the volunteer stuff, I think we're probably going to, if you're having trouble getting volunteers for that, I would think that we're going to get mixed results with this, but we're still going to try. I mean, it's...
And we could definitely put something about the adoptive program. You know, a blurb, if you're interested, you know, that goes out to the families.
Tell me, aside from the lack of us finding a volunteer or an organization to help spearhead this initiative of setting up this program, what are your thoughts of what you heard, just your first reaction of what you heard about having a program like this? Like, for example, you know, in our minds, we see this thing just as a total marketing campaign where you go into the local supermarkets, you see the signage. You go into Wawa, you see the signage. You've got all these points, you know, on the Facebook pages, on our website, all these areas where we just brand this initiative and get people into the mindset where they can donate the change in their pocket, and maybe we have a general donation where they don't really want to earmark it toward anything specific. They just want to donate it. Or maybe there's, maybe there's an organization who does have some type of donation that has an earmark to it, and they could put their change in there, or they could write a check toward that. Just that whole concept of doing something like that. What is your thoughts?
Well, some of the things that we changed this year, one of our biggest things was our membership, and we set up a PayPal account, and that was really convenient for the members. They didn't even have to think twice. You don't have to write a check. So if I do walk into a store and I see the sign and I see the link, I think of that, I can do it from my phone, or if you set up something where you can text, send $5 to whatever, and then it goes into your fund.
Yeah, they're great ideas.
Quick. It's something that somebody doesn't have to think about, go home and write down a check or send something.
Are you incorporated
No. I have to think.
as a 501c3?
We do not have, we do file taxes every year. I know we're a 501c3.
C3? Yeah.
Yes.
You're a nonprofit.
I'm trying to figure.
You're a nonprofit?
Yes.
Okay.
The income tax form.
I'm not trying, I just was curious because,
Yes.
that's important because
Yes,
that could be a vehicle that could eventually help the school.
Well, one of the things was the kindergarten initiative.
Right.
They didn't. Yeah,
They weren't incorporated.
Well, no, and they were, because now they have to dissolve it.
Oh, okay.
Everybody got back their checks that they wrote, but they had fundraisers at Michael's and Five Below.
Right.
There was money that they couldn't just give back.
Right.
And they approached us about saying, anything we have left, can we give to you to give to the kindergarten program? And we said, that's fine, but they're still in the process of dissolving.
Gotcha.
So nothing's happened. But that was one way that we were going to help them, because we give mini grants. We tell teachers, we're going to give you anywhere from $300 to $500 for you to purchase items. So for us to take that money from the kindergarten initiative and say, okay, kindergarten, you guys have $300, figure out what you need.
Right, some technology or buy something. Right.
I know I brought this up in the meeting the other night about our current community foundation. If that's already a way to donate money to our school or have a way to do that, how much money do we have in that now to show how people are donating? Is it $5? Is it $100? Because that might give you a trend of how people want to donate or how much they're willing to donate. Do we have a...
We have a few $1,000s in that account. There have been a couple of donors, who have given a fair amount of money, obviously not a lot of money, but a fair amount of money, and one was the Daniel Boone Alumni Association. They were dissolving that. I'm not boasting, just saying what they told me caused them to pick the foundation in order to take the balance in their treasury and give it to us.
They were another 501c3, right?
They were not.
Oh, they were not?
Nah.
So they were just collecting money?
No, they raised. They raised money through alumni basketball games.
Okay.
And some other things, which I don't want to sound. I'm not going to use.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But they raised some money, and they heard me give a couple of speeches and talks, on what we're looking to do with the Education Foundation, and saw some of the things that we did, and were impressed and said, yeah, this is the direction, we like to go, we like what you're doing. We had one of the classes, class of 73, had some money left in their, in an account, and the treasurer was just tired of handling the paperwork on it year after year with the bank, and the bank started taking money out of it because it was in an active account. And she felt bad about that. Got a hold of the other officers and say, look, we're not doing anything with this. Why don't we give it to the foundation? And explain a little bit about me and what I had said, and she was impressed with that as well, and contributed that money toward it. We've had some other sporadic, relatively minor, contributions based upon some very small fundraising efforts. The drop container at the community gates, where people would just take change out of their pocket and put in there, raised a few $100. But we have a couple $1,000s. I can tell you just to let you know where they buy in, where people buy in, the Brzezinski Field sign situation. I mean, you could bring Ray Swisher in here, and he would attest to this because I was involved with Ray. Al Brzezinski was a history teacher here at Daniel Boone in the first football coach, that existed. He was a bit of a character. He's a history teacher of mine, and I think a character is the best way to describe him. He's a fun guy to be around, a good teacher though, and just an all-around good guy. And the school board, decided to okay the fact that they would name the field, after him. Is what it came down to. However, there was no money in the budget in order to pay for the signage and the other things that you would do, in order to do that. So two individuals, Ray Swisher and George Henry, both here from Birdsboro. Ray's a former teacher, part of the faculty, and a guidance counselor here, and George is an alum. Daniel Boone just started a very small initiative by putting a couple things on Facebook. We're looking to raise money, this is what it will be, how much it will cost, and I'm telling you, it was staggering where money came from. Alabama, Arizona, California, from just alumni who saw it on Facebook. And I mean, the typical contributions were $25 to $50, and they didn't ask for any specific amount. Send what you can. Send what you can. And I'm going to tell you, virtually every one of them came back with a comment about Mr. B. Virtually everyone, came back about how, he was always a good guy. Some of them had a story with it about something that he did for them while they were a student, and it just stuck for them. And I will tell you, most of them were people that were former students that were 60 plus in age.
How much funding were you able to raise for that whole project?
I think the whole thing ended up costing, with the plaque that's still going to be put
right
up there, if I'm not mistaken.
I saw it. It's up. I think it's up. I think it's up.
Just put it up this week. Okay.
Yeah, I saw it.
Good.
It looks good. It's up.
Good.
I think it's up.
I haven't seen that yet. But I mean, it said the same thing of the
right.
there already. But that's great. I'm saying, shooting from the hip. Here, I should have brought my bag along. I want to say $2,700.
But I mean, I'm talking about the Brzezinski sign field as well. You raised the money for that as well.
I think everything that was
all in. What was
about
it?
$2,700. I'm shooting from the hip there. So
somewhere in that neighborhood.
Don't hang me if it was $2,900.
Well, you need to tell the press is here, so you need to tell them that.
But I do have what that is, but I have it in my in my foundation bag. But it did. I mean, it came in, but there was an attachment to that. There was a personal attachment to that. And I think if you can grasp on to that nostalgic, and I can tell you, I have personal friends that work in the development offices of some local colleges here, and they tell you the same thing. It's nostalgic reflections of your time that you were there that causes you to give. It's the long and the short of it. It's just not a blasé, oh yeah, that's where I went, I don't have anything better to do with my money, so I guess I'll throw some there. You had a warm feeling, and we were able to touch that in that particular instance. And that cause. And that appears to me to be where it's at. I can tell you from the people in those development offices with those universities, they say that they spend piles of money every year, and generally their largest contributions come from someone they haven't even been working with. Walk in the door. Just walk in the door.
How does the foundation, now this is probably just very, how does the foundation work with the school? Like, does the school have...
They're a separate entity from the school. We have ad hoc membership on there. I being one of them, and a board member. At this time, Mrs. Facette had resigned her position, given that she's leaving the board,
right.
And Mr. Basil now is the board representative that sits on the foundation board. It's not the school district's entity. We lend our. It's for them to do anything, like when we get. Then we can kind of tie in the EITC research, and I already talked to Mrs. Twardowski on the phone today about what we found, you have to have, for this EITC program, it's called the Earned Income Tax Credit Program, businesses can donate money, but it has to be for a specific program, and it has to be through a nonprofit. And community foundations fall into that. In doing my research,
it sounds like PTC would too. So I mean,
pardon?
It sounds like PTC would also. I was
PTC. You need some nonprofit to be able to funnel the money. Yeah, funnel. I said that wrong. That's going to be on tape. Funnel the money through in order to have it benefit the program. But the EITC program, if I can kind of jump ahead on the agenda, is only allowed for businesses, and then you have to endorse the program as a district, and then the program has to be geared towards something very specific, like, say you wanted to start a 111 laptop initiative for students, which you hear around some districts, and we didn't have the money, and a business wanted to get tax credits, they could donate money, it has to be money, to the district. We could write up a proposal and say we only got enough money to do it, say, just for all kindergarten kids or all first grade kids. We could do something like that. Like you said, it has to be some kind of enhancement. You're never going to get community foundations or anybody to donate for what they feel should normally be paid for in the budget and things like that. You just don't see that often.
So it's need-based. It's need-based from a standpoint where needy students, may need, something. If I'll throw activity fee in there. If you have a group of students, who have a need in order to pay the activity fee, and they may have a hardship or something like that, you can provide things like that. I mean, they're the areas that tug at people's heart to say, I don't want to see a kid left behind, no pun intended of what they're doing. But
And I know in Pottstown,
those are the limits of the credit. Wait, I'm not following that. It has to fall into that category in order for someone to get a credit, for a business to get a credit?
For a business to get a credit, they first of all have to be willing to donate money.
Okay, so let's take an example, a very specific example. A business wanted to donate money toward a very specific program, the math program. They just wanted to donate $1,000 toward the math program for the elementary school. Does that qualify for
a proposal would have it's after a proposal would, they can't just say it's for a math program. You have to write up a very specific proposal. You have to write, there are guidelines, there are manuals, and I copied out the stuff that you need to go through in order to have this stuff happen. It's not just, there's a lot of paperwork involved and then there's a limit to how much an individual business can get. When I worked at North Penn, we had gotten involved in this, and to be honest with you, very limited results because there's a lot of hoops that you have to go through to make this kind of program work. And there is a limited, it really, the benefit that a business gets is it's a tax deduction. It's it's money out of their pocket, but then it can turn around and help the school. And there's all kinds of organizations that are eligible for it, community foundations being one of them. And that's the way, if we were to ever get money from an EITC donation, it could not come directly to the school. It would have to go through a community foundation or another nonprofit. They can't just write a check to $10,000 and give it to the Daniel Boone School District. So that's how the EITC program works.
So it's based on a percentage of the total money needed for that program? Could they write out the check for, if it was $50,000 for that program, they could write out, the businesses are only going to get so much of a tax credit for whatever they give. Right. There's a limit. So I don't know what that monetary limit is. But typically what you see are it could be $50,000, it could be $60,000. I don't know that there's a limit that way, but there's only a certain limit they're going to get in terms of an individual business getting a tax break for it.
Well, interestingly enough, I believe one of Corbett's proposals is an expansion of that program.
Correct. This is frankly, it's a way for businesses to be able. Corbett's, I think, purview is beyond just the public school experience, and he's looking for a way to help out private schools as well in a way that is not called a voucher and in a way that's not called something else. Because I took the time to print out. There's 96 pages of places that qualify for the ability to receive grants, and YMCA's are here. private schools are here, free libraries, film institutes, things like that. So it's, but also right on here is Wyomissing Education Foundation.
So would we have to
Education.
register?
No, we're already registered. The foundation would have to register.
Right.
We could help them out with the paperwork. We would have to write a letter of endorsement to say that we would be willing to participate in that. So, and then you can start to go out and see if people, in North Penn, which is a robust community economically, they told me that there are even a lot of businesses that aren't aware that this program is even available to them, and only the businesses that are kind of aware of it actually get involved in it. And then when they get involved, they're because it's capped and limited, they tend not to get too much. There's not a lot of how should I say, traffic through the EITC yet. It's kind of it's a program that's been around actually for about maybe 6-7 years now.
Well, you'll have to. I think part of that success is that you have to go out and solicit those businesses. I don't think those businesses are just waiting there ready to hand you a check.
Mm-hmm. No,
you have to go to those businesses and say, listen, you have an opportunity to have some tax credits.
You have to make them aware. Yeah,
right.
You have to make them aware.
Is there any reason why the PTC or the Ed Foundation wouldn't register? Is there a cost to doing it?
No, I don't. No, there's no cost. The issue becomes once you do the pay, they would probably need some technical support, which we could probably provide. You know, given that it's not even really an education department initiative. It is the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development.
Right.
So it's not even a PDE initiative. It's something that benefits schools, but we could certainly, I'm sure they would offer guidance, and I could certainly, if we would ever get to that point, get a lot of help from, I'd just call up one of the school districts and find out what they did, and that would just be a matter of coordination. So I'm not concerned about that. It's after you get it, just like everything that we talk about, what's going to happen with it once you have it in place.
Right. Well, if either of your organizations have interest in doing that, I'm sure we can help. I don't see why what the negative is of having that available.
So I would probably have to sit down and let them they would get a better understanding of it. Because, we have there's some pretty big businesses in this community that if they were aware of it, I don't want to start naming businesses, but we do have some rather lucrative businesses within the confines of Amity Township, Union Township, and Birdsboro. I'm not so sure how many of them are actually aware of this EITC program. But I think at the end of the day, most of the contributions to help these kind of efforts, you won't want to be relying on the EITC. You'll want to be, and we had talked about this when I had a general. You got to get that direct campaigning go, kind of like what Joe did with, albeit it wasn't $1 million. He got $2,700 in a rather short amount of time because it was for a focused cause. So I think there's a certain marketing that has to be. That was just direct solicitation.
Period.
I mean, that's usually when you talk to anybody that does fundraising, that's your biggest way of getting money.
Personal relationship.
Well, not the personal relationship, but just
and a cause, and a cause that they.
No, but what I mean is, fundraising is good, this and that, but it's people putting their name on a check and sending it to you and saying, like the Penn State, these big alumni associations. That's how they get their money. People write them checks, and you put them in the bank.
I think you're right. There's that emotional connection that was there with a coach, with a teacher that they did. But in reality, there's going to be emotional connection with programs altogether. I mean, at some point we're going to have to say, we don't have sports, we don't have music. So the people that enjoyed those things while they were here might not be a specific teacher or a specific thing, but it's like, wow, wrestling really was,
right.
did a lot for me in high school, or football, or band, or whatever. Because realistically, that's what we're going to have to cut if we can't cut education. And
well, I would like to see.
Tax dollars have paid for that, but tax dollars aren't there.
I know we always go back to the sports and those things because that's where
we can.
But I'd really love to see people. I would really love to see people put money into academics. I mean,
well, and that's why we haven't. I mean, that's to an extent why we haven't. Because you're right, it doesn't bridge the gap. But year after year after year, there's less and less and less to cut. So next year that $800,000 that wouldn't close the gap. We may have to because we need that for whatever. I mean, I know it doesn't. It's not there, but.
And one can hope that the economy recovers and the budgets come back, but I mean, the reality is, first the middle school programs will go, and then they won't be feeding the high school, and they'll go. They will go if the money's not there.
Yeah.
Boards won't have any choice. Then people might be willing to reach into their pocket and say, well, you know what? If we're going to have to save the football program, or we're going to have to save the band program, or we're going to have to, they might be more willing to donate to a foundation. I don't know. I mean, that's just pure speculation on my
They
part.
ultimately decide what they'll support and what they won't support.
Correct.
From that standpoint, be it donations or paying taxes.
Right.
But it'd be nice to have the framework of how to do that in place before it comes to that point, I think, and that's what we're trying to do. We're
And
trying to get
it's
the framework
maintaining,
there
right.
so that when the time comes, everybody's not scrambling like they were with the kindergarten program. We're trying to have that in place. We're trying to be a little bit proactive in the area that we can be.
And in itself, that's just trying to maintain the status quo. I mean, there still has to be focus on, and I hate to be a broken record, but that's really where I'd love to see, us enhance our academic programs. We're just trying to keep the status quo, and our grade levels are still where they are, and our test scores are still where they are, and we're trying to save a program that's getting cut, but we're not helping build up those other academic programs, which if someone could be more aware of it and they knew they could donate time or money or resources or something else.
That's foreign language this year.
Right. There's so many academic programs that
muddy the water, but we're treading water here right now, on this subject. What's the board's thoughts on utilizing the facilities you have now and the resources you have with regards to talent, in generating revenue for the school district, albeit sports camps in the summer for kids, language camps for kids in the summer, where it's paid to participate, in something like that. You can have science camps in the summer, where there's just a variety of things. Some school districts have done this with tremendous success, and they make money at it, and people are willing to pay in order for their kids in order to do that. I've seen theater camps take place. I've seen.
I think we do some of that.
Exactly to our point with this adopt a program, where you can earmark those specific things.
What I need to say is, let's say the Education Foundation or the PTC says, we'll run a summer camp program, or these are the 5 programs we're going to run this summer, and we need to use school facilities. Okay? I can tell you, if you're going to charge the Education Foundation, you're going to charge PTC for use of facilities to raise money, which ultimately will benefit the school district, you can't do it. You can't do it. The fact that, you need to provide the facilities that have been, quote unquote, bought and paid for already, in order to,
facilities are different, though. Facilities are different than expenses. I mean, if there's additional janitorial costs or utility costs, I mean, to say that we shouldn't charge for the building, I don't know that anybody here would have a problem with charging for the building. But if along with that you want, 5 extra janitors for free to clean everything up, and I mean, what are you talking about by charging for the use of the facilities? Because that is a cost to all the taxpayers, not just the taxpayers that are utilizing the campus.
Because it nets out to an expense for the school.
Right.
So now we got a bigger problem. We created a bigger problem.
No, there could be a number associated to that, but it obviously needs to be a legitimate number where if you're paying for a janitor to be there and work for that particular day, regardless if this camp goes on or not, that's not an additional expense for the school district.
And I don't have our facilities policy in front of us, but I think there's a certain allowance for some of that.
No, but I'm just saying.
I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but I know that we.
Types of things and initiatives I think you can get a community to buy into, which can generate some non-tax revenue, and utilize the sources. It can create employment for people, quite honestly. I mean, you could have teachers, instructors, coaches, whatever, who get paid some form of a stipend in order to do that, during the summertime.
I do know, like Penn State Berks, they do have kids programs in the summer. Albright runs the programs too. So obviously,
we do some of that stuff. There are already people running theater camps and stuff in the summer.
Hash all this stuff out.
But like the theater camp is, AIC runs it for their 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. BEC runs it.
It's not a fundraiser.
It's not a fundraiser. You pay basically what the teachers
Correct.
pay. Right. I think what he's saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is There are groups out there that go and rent out Eastern College to do a tennis camp.
Right.
We now have a facility that you can run up and down all day long and you don't have to worry about destroying the field. My sister flew from Texas to go attend a camp at Hill School. Why can't we bring those camps that are run by outside sources in to use our facility during the summer when they're basically sitting empty and get a percentage of the profit? You know, the Phillies do baseball camps. I'm constantly looking for camps for my kids. I don't want to drive to Malvern. I don't want to drive to King of Prussia. There's not much out this way that maybe we could be the landing point for them to cross over into Berks County to host camps here at Daniel Boone.
Yeah, that's been talked about as well. It's a great idea. We always go back to the same problem. Who's going to spearhead that? Who is going to make people aware that we're there?
If it's going to generate revenue for the school district, so if is it worth paying somebody a part-time position of $20,000 a year, in order to raise $200,000, in revenue, for the school district? That's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. But to look for someone to put in, 20 or 25 hours a week in order to promote, run, schedule, and do all that stuff, as a volunteer, that's unrealistic to think that's going to happen. Now, the school district does have the ability, in order to, frankly, incubate this program for a couple of years where you may not see profits. But, I can tell you, you just have to see what they do here at the community center with their summer camp that they have. Overflow, is what it comes down to.
They have around 160 kids, my son being one.
It's tremendous. People are lined up in order to get into that program. That's what it comes down to. That's indicating to me there's a need.
Right.
There's a need. And I'm not saying just to babysit kids during the day, but you can do it from an educational standpoint because you have teachers who buy into that. You have to pay them $1 million. No, you don't have to pay them a lot of money.
And we don't want to take away from their program either, but I think we could enhance and feed off of what they have.
And you'll find out what's a good mix and what isn't.
Right.
Maybe science is real hot one particular time, or you have an instructor that gets kids real excited about it and does things that excite. Or you have something where learn a foreign language in the summer. I don't know if you can do that with a kid.
I believe TSA does at the middle school in the summer. I believe they have.
There are a number of
you can run programs.
There are a number of things that are run in the summer, but they, like she said, the summer programs that run pay for themselves and then they go away. There's no profit margin or motive behind those. They want to cover their costs and then they go away. So the buy-in is my kid gets to do a great activity. The school district's just really the place where it happens, and the money exchanges hands, and the people that ran the program covered their costs and maybe make a couple extra bucks, and that's it.
I think you're going to have parents also think, well, I'm already paying taxes, so why am I paying extra for this program that we've just had the last 3 years to cover costs, per se, which they don't realize.
The eternal
during the summer. If it's done during the summer,
it's the eternal dilemma.
The summer, they're going to see that as something completely separate. That, and let's say, I'm not aware of us having the ability to provide, I hate to call it a primer course, but a prep course for ACTs and SATs, at our school. Do you think you'd get parents from the high school would want their kids to take something like that? Sure they would. And you'd get buy-in. This could also be expanded to the community, the adult community that exists here, as well. We have some great computer labs and things like that, which you can offer adult education, to people, in the evenings.
We had that years ago,
sure,
in the 80s, and that just went away.
Mr. Peterson, does the Ed Foundation have the interest or the availability to help launch some of these ideas that you have?
We haven't had the discussion, in order to do that. So I couldn't adequately answer that, with 100% confidence. It wouldn't be fair for me to write that check for those people, without first discussing it. But
because that's where our struggle is. We need somebody to help get us off the ground.
But the circumstances are if the expectation is to do something of that type of magnitude, without some seed money or whatever in order to have it, or somebody to do it as a volunteer, I give that guy a gold star, you know, and I mean a solid gold star.
The model is, quite frankly, where this is effective, there is somebody that is in charge of it, and somebody makes it work. And they're generally, it's a paid position.
And accountable.
And they're accountable to the, I talked to the, even the Wyomissing, the superintendent that was at Pottstown is now in Wyomissing, and they had, quote, in addition to somebody that actually works and runs the Ed Foundation, who is a paid person and not just a volunteer, and they're like fundraisers, they're grant writers, they pay their own salary, they bring in, you have to, it's an overhead, there's a built-in overhead cost to running these nonprofits. Even though they're, quote, nonprofits, they're still in the making money business, and it's a full part-time to full-time job at best to try to raise money. Altoona did it. When Altoona, who now has a $1 million foundation, they told me that they actually just took a teaching position one year, and instead of hiring a teacher, they took the gamble and they paid that person's salary. And now Altoona is one of the strongest Ed foundations in the state of Pennsylvania.
And for 3 years, that position did not bring the money back, because I sat in that same meeting.
Right. You remember that.
3 years, that position did not bring in enough money to cover that salary. And it took off then. And it took off, and now they bring in significantly more dollars. But that seed money had to be there to bring someone in who was specifically trained in order to do that, you know, and people to have a vision and a belief that it was going to happen.
I guess the belief is spend money to make money.
Well, and I think
I don't think there's any way around that. Every expert I've talked to in the field of fundraising and grant writing and Ed foundations, they have all.
And even in business, I mean,
Yep. Right.
We've all been in business.
Yep.
You have to spend it to make it, but I don't know that in this economy, when we're laying off teachers and we're laying off aides, that
Understood.
the public's going to.
I was just going to say, I mean,
no. There's another side to it.
This committee can come up with the recommendation. I was just going to say the same thing. We can come up with a recommendation if we agree to go to the board and say we recommend to get a 20-hour-a-week salaried person in here to start launching this. But I'll tell you, as soon as we get into the budget workshop, it's the first thing that's going to get cut.
Yeah, and the other thing is that the one foundation, the person that did it in, I think was doing it in Pottstown, whatever money the foundation had raised, the foundation was responsible for paying the salary of the individual, not the Pottstown School District.
So right, if it's the foundation.
But I understand.
At Altoona, the school district.
At Altoona, they decided to fund it at that time. That's correct. That was they said that's 20 years ago. So that was a long time ago that they did that. I don't, whatever the budget economy was then, there's always been ups and downs. But I know for a fact in Pottstown, they were using money that was raised, which you're allowed to do in a foundation, as overhead costs to pay the salary of the person who was running the program. And they were a very healthy program. So,
and again, because the money coming in the foundation isn't directly the schools to spend as
that's
it
correct.
desires.
That's
it's
correct.
The foundation. So if the foundation chooses to do X, Y, Z with it, and the school would prefer A, it's kind of.
Is the foundation active, or is it dormant at this point? Are you actively doing anything in the foundation?
We probably had our most successful 6 or 8 months run in raising funds, and we didn't have a meeting. It's long and short of it, so figure that out. Yeah, we're due to have.
So there's nothing really proactively happening in the foundation?
Nothing, no.
What about the BCIU? Would there be any? We could go to them. Do they have anything organized for summer, being the size that they are, with any kind of programs that maybe like we're doing with Transition House, that we could work with them?
I think they're pretty wrapped up in whatever they do for special needs kids, and a lot. They're more tied up into social services with helping needy parents and needy families. That's kind of the niche that the BCIU has carved out. They don't really do a lot of what I would call enrichment activities that would help Daniel Boone specifically. So I don't think the IU would be a good source of.
Actually, what was run here at the school was initially run by RAC.
Yes.
And they leased space.
I used to work in that program. I mean, they used to have a very robust evening school program, but all that money went to RAC.
No doubt about it.
I mean, districts collected a facilities fund, right? But that was it. I mean, districts weren't making money on RAC, was making money on RAC.
And I don't recall it being district employees.
No, I used to be one of their I was a subcontracted employee. I was a principal at Exeter, or assistant principal at Exeter, and they threw me a couple bucks on the side to administer the program, but it didn't come free.
Yeah.
It wasn't in my job description as an assistant principal at Exeter to run the Reading Evening School or the Reading Area Community College evening program campus. I came back at night. I was allowed to submit timesheets and put in those hours, so it came at a cost. It was not free.
Absolutely.
So let's kind of wrap this up a little bit with, I've got one additional question here, and that is, if we can't get anyone to really spearhead this initiative and make it to where we want it to be, at a very minimum, if we go into the budget season and people have the interest and they want to make donations toward very specific programs, what's the minimum we need to do to be able to accept that? Can we do that?
I think we've already answered that. Yeah, we can accept money, and then we can designate. It doesn't have to go through a foundation in that sense. So I think we're already incorporated as a school district, so we can accept gifts. I mean, we have a policy for accepting gifts, so that's basically the policy that it would fall under. And we would just have to designate someone to, they would write a check. It would probably wind up in the business office somewhere with someone, and everybody, as we do, wearing many hats. I would coordinate a little bit of it. I don't know what technology would do. Probably the building principals would get involved a little bit, depending on where it's going. The business office would have a function in making sure the money gets where it is. Mrs. Trainer in helping me. So it would be shared, as we do most of our responsibilities. It would definitely be a spread the wealth kind of program.
Do we want to make a recommendation to the board to
throw that out to the
hire
committee?
somebody for so many hours?
Well, I think we can have discussion on it with the whole
We can
board.
have discussion that we really feel it, if,
I think our discussion's here, and then we go to them
Well, I
with a
mean,
recommendation from this committee. I don't want us not to.
I think the recommendation, that's tough.
I'd like to see the program.
Let me make a
Have a
suggestion.
donation
I've been in
form.
contact with a
Put it
few
out there and see
superintendents that have been involved in some of this in other school districts where I've worked, and they've given me the name of a gentleman who I think would be a worthy invite to this committee for next month, who can, I think, probably better answer some of the questions. He's an expert in dealing with education foundations and fundraising efforts, and unlike the one gentleman that I had here from about a year ago from the Penn State area, this person is more into the process of how you actually get something up and running. And I think hearing from another expert will either will allow us to make a solid recommendation one way or the other based on what we know our limitations are. Because I'm not sure we totally understand what our limitations are. We know we need some leadership. We know we need some people. But there may be some other things that we might be missing. And I would like to take one more shot at that with somebody that, provided that he will come out. I haven't had that conversation, but I would defer. Nothing's going to change if he can't come between now and next month. But I could probably get that person here for next month if they're. That was what I was told by the superintendent that I spoke to. This person is very willing to come out and speak to groups about what he can do for you. And at this point, it's free, so it wouldn't cost us any money to invite the person and have him here.
Sounds great.
So that would be my initial suggestion before, because I don't think we're at the point of I don't want to go back to the board yet and say let's spend $30,000 on this, or I just don't think we're there.
We can launch the program. The framework's all there. I mean, we've all seen it. It looks good. The problem is I don't know that you can really push it without somebody at the helm, and it seems like you're not going to find that unless you're willing to pay somebody.
Sad state of affairs when you can't get somebody to volunteer on something unimportant.
I'd love to say I can do it, but I already spent 30 hours, 40 hours a week doing this stuff.
Yeah,
I think what Joe
we
said.
do that with everything. We try to grab it and try to run with it like we're doing with the alumni stuff.
Right.
We can't do that as a committee. we can't run all those
It needs to be an
things.
assignment for someone in order to do, and in all respect, I mean, you know, in order to get it done and get it done right and get it done timely, you're going to have to pay somebody to do it. And that doesn't mean that's out of greed or anything like. It's just it's the reality of it. It's the reality.
The sad thing is that that money that comes in probably wouldn't come to benefit anyone for a couple of years, depending on the low amount.
It generally needs to incubate for a little period of time. That's what the guy from State College told us.
And this is tough times to be able to have to sit there and watch that payrolling an individual to head this, which actually isn't really going to start for years down the road.
Maybe willing to donate right now. I mean, if they want to adopt a program and they know that it's going to salaries.
I would like to see the adopt a program actually be out there so people could do it. I don't think you're going to get a rush of people with money that we could direct that.
Honestly, from what I'm hearing tonight, you absolutely positively need to be specific with what you would want someone to adopt. You know, it's the long and the short of it. Something general, that's tough to go out and convince somebody to give money towards that. It needs to be specific. You know, on what am I helping? What am I working on specifically? In order to do that.
I have two suggestions. One, I grew up in Lancaster County, so I went to McCaskey High School in Lancaster. So I still, at times, read the newspaper over there online. And I know that Lancaster School District has adopt a particular classroom for a certain amount of money. You can adopt like third grade. And that's your third grade for that.
Similar to what we're talking about.
And that's all you would have to do. You know, I don't know how much that would do to get that word out. You know, kindergarten or to 5, whatever.
I think we're structured that
This would cost this much to have your name put on there. This is your classroom for that year. And I don't know the specifics of how they do that over there. But if it's $200 a year and you only got 5 people in the community to do it, that's $1,000 you have that you wouldn't have. That you
Correct.
Absolutely.
That's right.
The second thing I'm thinking of is fire companies or volunteer organizations or churches put on events, whether they're carnivals or fun days or something like that. Maybe this district could do a day like that at the stadium. Now, would people in the community volunteer to have certain sections there? Maybe. Because it's a specific event that they would be manning this booth or setting up this booth, and then you're taking in the money.
Right.
I know for a fact that there are, Governor Mifflin does that,
and would
Exeter does it.
Community people, particularly in the summertime, come to something like that and bring their kids and spend their money? I think they would.
Yeah.
To piggyback off of that, my daughter's involved in girls travel softball. We just Sunday night did Spooky Buddies on the railroad field. Through donations, selling food.
Yeah.
We raised almost $2,000
It's all,
in one night.
I know there's opportunities, yeah.
Watching a movie.
I know there's opportunities. I mean, I thought about the idea of having a garage sale, but do it all in the school parking lot and have people rent spots in the parking lot. They could all have a giant garage sale. We could raise money in addition to that, with our own booth.
That's like a Christmas bazaar.
Yeah, there's so many ideas out there you can implement, but who? The issue is the who. Who's going to organize it?
Tom, the thing you suggest, I happen to live in the Exeter community, and I actually was an employee of that district for a number of years. The one thing that we always looked forward to was the Exeter, I forget what they call it anymore. May Day.
Yeah.
They had the May Day over there. One day, I sat in the room and counted that money, and they make a lot of money in one day. It was one of my assignments when I was assistant principal. Sit there and count the cash. So, I mean, there are ways. They would fill Exeter's parking lot. I remember as a principal, all day long, the kids would have May Day activities. We'd be out on the field playing touch football, do this and that. And then by the end of the day, everybody would go out. The teachers would go out and volunteer and help. They'd sell food. They'd have mini rides. It was like a carnival.
Who would organize that?
It was run by one of the volunteer groups at Exeter. It was actually their main vehicle for raising scholarship money. So I think it might have been the Exeter PTO or whoever it was. It really didn't come directly back to the school, but there were some nice scholarship awards that were given out to kids, and they had a rather hefty.
The ultimate beneficiary was the community itself.
It was
be it students,
and it filled their coffers.
right.
You know what I mean? And then they would, work in conjunction with the school. So it was a huge fundraiser.
And it still is. They
Oh, that's huge.
They still do well.
Yeah. That.
Why couldn't you do something and tie it into homecoming? And make it a big community event. Homecoming's a big deal. To do something in the
Saturday,
fall,
homecoming or something.
and you do, like we were just saying, how much does Immaculate make when they do their Strawberry Festival? And you turn it into a whole weekend, and you're going to get the younger families to go participate in a carnival, a community that don't really have the homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets them into that filter, and then they'll know, oh, this is what I have to look forward to as my kids are growing.
Right.
Yeah,
That's certainly a good idea.
They're all great ideas. So the one reason we were happy to see you here and we invited you here is for you to hear some of these ideas that we're all talking about. And if you happen to get the word out, and if there is anyone there in your circle who may be interested in helping us on a volunteer basis, at least to get started, so we can get these initiatives going. The issue isn't not having the ideas; it's having the person to help us facilitate it. Right. So that's really where we struggle. So I know it's a difficult thing, but
go back and review our surveys and see, if there's anybody that needs some of what is being discussed.
Great. Appreciate
And I
much.
think, just to close out, we're looking to. I think if we can start small, like a seedling, like a big, a mighty oak was once this big, but we're having trouble just getting the thing in the ground, and that's the problem.
You need somebody with a shovel. I got it.
Right. Yeah. So it's like you've heard here tonight. I mean, we've been having these conversations for the better part of 2 years now, trying to figure out how to, we had hoped maybe we could go with using the athletic department as kind of an athletic activities and coordinate some of this, but then we had to downgrade that position. So, it's become tough from a personnel standpoint, even for us, to try to, staff this kind of position. Maybe you'll get an in-kind, grant that will allow us to hire somebody through the foundation. Who knows? I mean, maybe that's an angle that the foundation can begin to take. Say, look, we're trying to raise money.
I was thinking that direction.
You know what I mean? Let's raise some money to get a person in here who we can pay to be, and then I think you might even see the school be willing to have discussions about
match funds,
whatever. I don't know. I don't want to speak for the whole board.
Out loud.
Right.
That's just all.
So I think that's the direction we need to go. If there's a way to raise money to begin to get a part-time person, even if it's 10 hours a week to start, to give that person some incentive to say, you know what, the more you make, the more hours you're going to get, and the more it could turn into a full-time job for somebody. Mm-hmm. So that would be kind of where I think we need to, the seed we need to plant is how do we raise the money to get somebody to do the things that we want to get done.
Right. To get it to that point.
To get it to the point where they're self-funded. And that's in Altoona, obviously it took them 20 years to get there, but they're raising a lot of money. But all your private schools, Andrew comes here and talks about the Hill School a lot, but obviously they got a lot of.
It's a different.
But at the end of the day, they started somewhere, and Penn State understood. But my point is you can learn things from what these organizations do. In terms of process, they're experts at capital campaigning, so we can certainly learn. Understood.
Well, we're not looking to be that, but there's things that we could do.
You need to start small.
Right. Yeah, if we could just get it started.
Implement this online, see what comes in. Hopefully get volunteers along with it. But I do like Mr. Schatz's idea with adopt a classroom. What a better way! And who would organize that? But who better but the teacher of that room? So really, it would go to the principal of funds, and then it would trickle down to that classroom at their needs.
That's actually, we have policies. That's kind of a form of really what we have in our sponsorship and advertising policy.
You have a naming rights policy.
We have that already. We have a vehicle to do that. So that's.
That's pretty much out there. Your first year, in September when you go to meet the teacher for the first time. What is she saying? Hey, I need Kleenexes. I need sanitary liquid. Staple gun was the next thing I heard. You know, we're going through them like mad. So
Absolutely.
I'd like to see that.
Well, if you're looking for a volunteer, we were just trying to figure out, either you've got the newsletter for the PTC or you will be getting it for approval, because it goes out next week.
There we go.
Then it won't go out again until November. But if you can, I don't know if your
Something quick.
logo, what you're looking for, there's no reason why we can't put it into the newsletter that would go out next week, just to even see if anybody's interested.
That would be great. That would be fantastic.
But we just need some direction. I mean, we've got great writers that do a lot of fluffing things up, but...
Well, we have a logo that's under renovation, but we certainly have, you know, a concept that we can certainly describe for you that, and
Right.
I mean, the board's kind of given its unofficial sanction to the program, so it's, whether you call it adopt the program or adopt the classroom or whatever it is, the vehicle's there to do it. So, I don't know what we could put in. We can, you know.
Well, we've got a description already of this
If
program.
they're interested.
Yep.
We already have a written
We've
description
got a
for the
description
program.
we can share with you, and then
Okay.
Do you have anything on the website yet about
identify
that?
what we're looking for. Someone who can help
No,
us.
If you can give us that, we can get that into
Great.
the newsletter. That will at least go to the elementary kids.
Great, great. We'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
I don't know what else to say on this one.
yeah,
EITC, I think I covered for you.
We did cover that. The alumni database, just a quick background on that. We've tried to get started again just with the resources we had available and the volunteers through the students to try to start to build our alumni database. And we did it we're doing it in two very specific phases. The first phase is just to collect the alumni data itself, the names of all the alumni from Daniel Boone. And then the second phase is, once we have that, to get that data up to date with current information. And how we do that, we're still, there's many different ways of figuring that out. But we're in the first phase, and what we did was design a small software program to allow us to get just alumni data keyed in. And we've got everybody keyed in from
1966, pretty much all the way up through, except for 68, we could not find a yearbook.
So Daniel Boone's been around since 57, 58, 57. So we've got 66 to current day, except for 68, and we did that through.
You could, if I can find you a 68 yearbook, you're interested.
Yes.
Yeah, we did that through kids actually coming to volunteer in the tech room, keying in names of all the alumni.
And that's right. And I would say again, this is another initiative where we're going to hit a wall. We just
same thing.
It's
Same
the
problem.
same concept. So as we think of this person that we want to eventually, I think, Joe, the logical place is they would be on the staff of the Ed Foundation, and part of their responsibility would be to build an alumni database, because that's where the giving. You heard the guy say it. That's where the giving comes from your alumni.
Well, are you going to raise money by publishing all those names? I know that I have a book and also a CD of everybody that went to my high school.
We could mark as a way of marketing it. Yes,
Right,
that would be something we could do.
It was pretty costly
Right.
for that, but it's what a networking tool.
Absolutely.
Pre-Facebook and everything, but this was a couple of
And that's what these experts do.
Okay.
They do that kind of what you're talking. They're quote. I don't know that science. There's a whole science to it. I'm a school superintendent. I don't quite understand it, so I rely on those experts to do that for me. But they did, one of the things they said, if you're going to rely on Facebook to raise money, you're done. You need direct solicitation to raise it. They said it time and time again.
Targeted. It needs to be targeted.
So
Yeah.
Facebook's not going to be a way. You're
I
not.
don't know if you need any others than 68. I mean, you only know 68 right now?
Well,
Well, we don't have
any.
57 to
Right.
65.
Exactly. We have nothing 57 through 65.
Here's
Oh, you do not?
we
No,
do not.
We do not.
We have
Oh.
66 through 2010, with the exception of
And
68.
But you have 61.
We,
I gave that.
you gave us something. So
Yes,
I
we
don't
didn't
think we
lose
have
it,
that
Tom. We
key
have
in
it.
yet.
That's my wife's.
Yeah, we have it.
I was going to say, we don't have.
Copy it. Get it back.
Yeah, I know that's not keyed in yet. Tom, who did you give that to? Who did you give that to again?
I gave that to Mr. Jacobs, I thought.
Oh, you did. That's right. You did give it to Mr. Jacobs.
And they just have their reunion coming up this month, our 50th reunion.
57 to 65.
1961.
That's definitely not in the database? Did you search by chance the database for
I
it?
had Scott Matz check it for me, and Ginny confirmed.
We have everybody.
Okay.
But
We'll
you
double
don't have
check
that
on that.
yearbook either? Like, you don't have it back yet?
No, but then everybody's up to date and their current address, who's living out of that. They've contacted every person. There's only like 66 people. That's
Right. Yes, the classes were small then.
Okay, 300 people.
Yeah, not back then.
Another copy of this.
Of
Anything
61?
like my dad's, who's 80 years old.
Well, you may want to just
Out
yeah.
the building.
get his number in case we can't locate it, so we can get moving on that.
Yeah.
Right.
But he did give it to Mike, I think.
I do remember
I
that.
mean, there would be different ones.
I don't want to say anything public about that. See him after the meeting. 'Cause he's a good guy.
Was it a class of 57 or it opened in 57?
Well, the class of 57, I think.
So they opened,
Mr. Peterson, is that right? Is it the class of 57? Or did they did this?
My brother, that was the class my oldest brother was in, and that was Daniel, that was the first class of Daniel Boone High School.
Yeah, they
Class of
incorporated it in
57?
56.
Correct. It was the Daniel Boone Joint School District.
In
That's what it's
56.
called.
So 56, 57 was the first graduating class.
Because prior to that, it was either Birdsboro High School
Or Amity.
High School.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what it was.
Amity Primary used to be Amity High School.
Exactly.
Right.
So we don't have all the answers of how we can effectively use this information once we do get it up to date, or what our next step is to best get this information up to date. But we wanted to at least start the process by getting names centralized into a database of alumni, and that's sort of where we are in the process here. One avenue was that we were, if worse came to worse, take a look at some of the microfilm we have and try to pull the alumni names from the other years off of microfilm.
Actually, I mean, I just want to compliment everybody that's helped, the students, Mr. Jacobs, while he was
did a
here.
great job.
Based on the quote, the manpower that we could dedicate to this, we've really come a long way. But at this point, we're running out of, something has to happen with it now. And that's where we are.
Okay. Could you, I know you're new to this, Mr. Campbell, but could you do a little research on the microfilm itself? Just so we could take a look at it and see what it looks like. Is it even reasonable to think that somebody could sit there and scan through it while someone else keys in names? I had told Mr. Jacobs when he was looking into it, when we get to that point, I'd be happy to come in and take a look at it myself firsthand, so I could see how we can get it into that software program. I know we can't get it in there technically, but is there a process that somebody could sit there and read it and someone else key it in and get it done in a reasonable amount of time?
I will take a look at it, or at least inquire to see if I can find a machine.
Does
that
it
can read
exist?
it.
And
Right.
that's all I'm looking for.
Okay.
That's about it. Unless anyone else has any other comments, I really appreciate you coming out and giving us your thoughts and input.
I think next
Really?
month we should look forward to my getting that other gentleman here.
Okay. Sounds great.
I have one thing that's not related to anything on this, but back to our advertising, selling ads.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to one of the women on the JOC who's with Governor Mifflin,
Mm-hmm.
and they have contracted with a company called Market Street Sports Group, and they're out of Lancaster. And I think Wilson, and I think Muhlenberg just looked at them too. But what they do is they come in and they look at the school, they identify all the places you can do the advertising, they handle it all. They don't do anything. So, and they take a percentage, but I think she said they were looking at roughly and don't quote this because this was just, I think 250, 300,000 over a period of 2 or 3 years.
Is this different than the group we talked about?
Yeah, we've never looked at this group.
Okay. Local in Lancaster. So I was wondering if I further information to Dr. Otto, we could see if maybe they'd come out and talk to us at one of the meetings.
I can certainly put that on my list here as I'm writing it now as you say it. So,
If that ran it through the foundation, couldn't that hire?
again, that's typically what foundations will do. They'll coordinate with groups like that. But since we don't have, a fully functioning foundation, no offense, John, I mean, we're kind of we need to kind of get that kick started.
Wilson and Mifflin, though, are using that they're using that company, and
What was the full name of it? Market Street?
They contract directly with the school board. Who knows what they are?
Oh, they do?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're directly with the school.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. That's not going through any foundation.
No,
I mean,
Market Street, what's the full name?
Market Street Sports Group.
Okay, I'll check into
And
it.
I'll forward you the email I got.
Great, that'd be appreciated.
If you recall, there's one controversy that came up relative.
Oh, that was with the Army. Yeah.
Is the U.S. Army sponsoring their weight room?
Right.
You know, and fitness facility. It caused some.
I didn't understand that flap, but
Well,
They're worried about recruiting? That was the issue?
It becomes, especially in
got real
time
big.
of war.
Right.
Some parents are extraordinarily sensitive to that.
Yeah.
Not saying I am.
Okay, well, we'll try to get them in, hopefully, for the next meeting, if that's doable. So if anyone's interested, Mr. Peterson, if you're interested in attending and hearing, you're more than welcome, obviously, to.
It's nice that we don't get this. This is a large turnout for us, by the way. So please come back again. I mean, there are more people here than at the Finance Committee.
It's early.
Yeah.
It's early for that.
It's what we call the calm before the storm.
Yeah.
Hey, watch what you wish for.
They're going to lay off 88,
Yeah, watch what you wish for.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you all.
I'll take the recording and turn it off.
Yep. Can I? I'm going to